how's it going, everybody? It is Josh Thomas here from the Bit Block, and I'm going to be sitting down here and very casually going over a few complaints that I have heard about the Nintendo Switch that I personally don't really agree with. So this is kind of me responding to the criticisms that the Nintendo Switch presentation, or just the Nintendo Switch in general, has received. I want to point out right off the bat, if you are new here, I think there are plenty of people that can inform you I am not a fanboy of Nintendo's. I've had many complaints about Nintendo's in the past. I am personally very excited about the Switch. I think it's going to be amazing, and I think in a couple years from now it's going to be doing really well. I think it's going to be doing really well, like, even at the launch. Yeah, I just think that there are some complaints that people like to throw at Nintendo that I don't agree with, and I don't think they're fair, so I'm not going to take it anymore, and I'm going to defend Nintendo.
Okay, that's all fine and dandy, however, the whole unscripted thing kinda bugs me. Now, I'm not gonna make it a law that you must use a script when making a video, since some people have done well without one. Where I feel the line should be drawn is where you're presenting an argument against several people who either have done some research on the topic in hand, or can organize their points better. In this kind of situation, it makes more sense to write down a few bullet points ahead of time, especially since you're going against Boogie2988, Jim Sterling, and Review Tech USA, where 2 out of those 3 I can confirm have scripted their videos prior to hitting record.
Okay, so first of all, the one thing that I actually am very surprised to see people sort of complaining about is the price. So in case you don't know, for some weird reason, the Nintendo Switch is going to retail on March 3rd, that's when it launches, for $299.99. So essentially $300 here in North America. There are somehow people who think that is overpriced. I don't really get it, because, you know, what bothers me is, and a lot of them are saying, like, I wish it was $250. That's what they wanted it to be. That's what they assumed it would be. It's not that, so they're upset. I think $300 is about as expensive as they could have made it. You kind of want to stay mainstream in a way, and I think $300 still is that. You know, what bothers me is there's a lot of people that are like, I want Nintendo to be competitive with Xbox and PlayStation. And it's like, you want them to be competitive with them, but then anytime Nintendo prices their machine in a way to where they can maybe be competitive with them as far as, like, horsepower and as far as the capabilities of the system, you complain. And what other, you know, what I don't understand is, it's like, if a Nintendo machine is $300, that's overpriced, yet if an Xbox and a PlayStation is $300 or $350, that's not overpriced? Because that's pretty much what those consoles launched for, and I don't think anybody was complaining that it's overpriced.
Here's the thing, people have been complaining because that $300 is not paying for better visuals or frame rates, but for the motion controls built in. There is also the fact that Nintendo is advertising the console for the 3DS's audience, but the system isn't accommodating for the price tag that audience is willing to pay for. Let me put things into perspective. The 3DS started selling well after Nintendo lowered the price from $250 to $160, and it sold even better with the alternative models like the 3DS XL and the 2DS. There's also the price for alternate controllers, accessories, and docks, which are more expensive than most accessories on the market.
And I know people are going to be like, well, it's not overpriced because traditionally the Xbox and the PlayStation, those are systems that have a lot of power behind them, a lot of horsepower. Everybody turns into Tim Allen all of a sudden when it comes to talking about video game machines. And we'll talk about this technical spec thing a little bit later, because I got some stuff to say about that. Nintendo gives you value in different ways. Microsoft and Sony, they like to give you value as far as, like, ooh, it's got the cutting edge processor thing chip. Whereas Nintendo's like, hey, you know, it's a pretty darn good capable system, but it's also got a lot of fun things with it. Nintendo's like the only video game console anymore, they're the only video game maker anymore that actually wants to kind of, like, find new ways to have fun with a game, with a controller. And I think that is just so crucial and so important when it comes to video games. Like, why do you want everything to just be so stagnant? Why do you want everything to just be a normal controller? And I don't even like calling it a normal controller. It's more of like a classic controller. Yeah, this works really well in some cases. And so does this. This is really fun. And so is this. Like, video games, you have to stop thinking video games are all this. Because that's stupid, that's closed-minded, and this always isn't the most fun way of doing something.
Ignoring the part where you don't do the motion for a mouse and keyboard. You peasant. Here's the problem. This is standard. The reason why people are complaining is that what you're referring to as boring has a 100% success rate in the hardware department, as opposed to making a mistake because the motion control misread your movement. If a developer messes up the controls on a standard controller, it's because they were being lazy, not because they couldn't program around a control scheme with a noticeable failure ratio, even if it is just by a little.
So, what I'm getting at is Nintendo gives you value for the $300 price tag by giving you a really cool HD rumble feature in both of the controllers. I think it's in both of them.
Man, this unscripted format is really serving you well if you can't confirm one of the basic features of the system.
You know, being able to actually feel glass pouring into, or water pouring into a glass in your hand, that could be pretty damn cool. And that kind of detailed rumble could be something that does enhance your game experience. I mean, just basic rumble does make you feel better when you're playing a game. Like when you get hit and you feel that, that's pretty cool. So having a better version of that, I'm okay with paying a little bit more for that.
Okay, more detailed rumble. Nice. But will developers use it? The answer most likely is that Nintendo themselves will use it, a few third-party devs will shoehorn a gimmicky part of the game that will not be missed if it gets re-released on a different platform, and it will be forgotten when Nintendo breaks out the big titles that don't use them. In fact, here's a little thought experiment. Look at the biggest games on the Wii U and 3DS, and find how many use a majority of the gimmicks.
Something that I think is weird, but a lot of people were complaining about the price, and for some reason, they all just think like, I think it's too much for Nintendo. I don't think Nintendo should be $300. Why? Why is Nintendo the system that has to be like dirt cheap, yet you still want it to be... You still want it to compete with the high-tech system somehow? Like, you want all these third-party support and all that, yet you don't want it to be expensive in order to be able to get those? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Mostly because I've never heard people complain about this. Nor do you point in the direction of someone who is making this complaint. Keep in mind, Josh will bring up the Three Stooges later when pointing out their complaints, but a few times in the video, he makes a claim with no proof and some cynical asshole can waltz on in here and then call your statement complete bullshit. As for the point you brought up, I'm just gonna assume that you took two arguments, the console is underpowered, and it's overpriced, and due to a nasty side effect of doing this unscripted, you combine the two together to make an easy argument to debunk, albeit unintentionally.
But motion control can be used as a main way to play a game, like Wii Sports, Resort, or maybe 1-2 Switch and stuff like that, to where it's like the whole game is really built around the motion control. Zack and Wiki, Red Steel 2, to name a couple of them, Boom Blocks. There have been many games in the past that are fantastic games, and it is because of the motion control.
No, those great games were great because some talented people wanted to make an interesting title using the motion controls, and the publishers saw dollar signs from all the Wii units sold. That doesn't undo the fact that these games were good, but had Nintendo not printed money with Wii Sports, these titles would never be made. Not to mention, those great controlling Wii games are seen as the exception to the mountain of shovelware that controlled like crap. Oh, also, I love how you never brought up the Wii U. You know, the system whose motion controls were not implemented the best by third parties, and in one case, a first-party game.
And for first-person shooters, I can't go back to playing a first-person shooter like this. It seems clunky and slow. Being able to literally pinpoint where I want to shoot and all that, this is the way to play a first-person shooter as far as I'm concerned.
Which is why the mouse and keyboard are never acknowledged even though it fits your description word for word. Oh, and before anyone gets on my case, the PC market has become as accessible as any of the three consoles, so I feel ignoring it seems to be pointless, especially since a point in the Switch's favor could be its ability to be the companion to PC gaming, as opposed to a direct competitor like the PS4 and Xbox One.
New ways to play video games and exploring those pastures and constantly pushing forward with that is very important. So whenever I hear people say
how the Joy-Con controller can use HD haptic feedback to provide the feel of a drink and ice cubes being inside of it. Why? I don't know. Motion controls. I don't know why they still think we want motion controls.
The downplay of the initial Switch sales pitch in favor of making another gimmick-laden waggle festival.
Nintendo, no one cares about any of this motion shit. They stopped giving a shit about this kind of games with the Wii!
it kind of annoys me. Because it's really self-indulgent. You're living in a bubble. You're assuming that because you don't like motion controls, nobody else does. And you're thinking, motion controls were introduced in 2006. It's 2017. Let's get rid of them. They're old now.
First of all, thank you for using a live reaction from Review Tech USA. You know, the on-the-nose immediate reaction. You know, the type that's ill-informed and off the top of his head. You know, hypothetically, if he calmed his man-tits and thought about it for a moment, he might generate a more informed opinion on it. Also regarding Boogie, he was arguing that the show could have spent more time on specs and such, as opposed to the little gimmicks that might not matter in the long run. As for Sterling, you took him out of context. He was arguing that the Switch's massive selling point, that being portability, would make more sense to emphasize as opposed to showing the tricks used for the Wii for a third time in a row. I don't necessarily agree with these ideas, but their points have some level of justification, since specs will allow the consumer to hypothetically know how powerful the system would be. And due to the mountains of shovelware, motion controls have lost the magic originally shown. This was the most amount of proof you had, and you fucked it up.
Well, just like anything, motion controls have made advancements, and I'm willing to bet that the Joy-Cons have even more precise motion control. And yeah, I mean, look at the old controller, look at the NES controller, look at the Super Nintendo controller, the N64, the GameCube. All of Nintendo's controllers have always pushed forward with new ideas. You know, back in the day, the NES controller was really weird. Like, before the NES controller, you would play, I'll use this Link as an example, this Link amiibo. There was just like a little knob, and you'd do this, and there was like one button on an Atari or whatever. That's what the standard controller was. And then Nintendo came along, and they had the NES thing, and they had buttons and a D-pad and stuff. And you had 2-player support, and you had, like, Nintendo has always been about pushing the boundaries with what can be done with a controller. I have no idea how there's so many people that are like, I grew up with Nintendo, I love Nintendo, man, but they gotta stop with these wacky new controllers. What? If you really grew up with Nintendo, you gotta stop and realize that those things you were using to play on the Super Nintendo and the N64, those were very weird and revolutionary for their time, and they became standard.
Okay, first, Atari had 2-player co-op. Hell, the Pong machines were built around the idea of 2 players competing against each other. Second, a decent chunk of what you said isn't necessarily wrong, but the main controllers that you show, you know, these, were built based on the limitations of its predecessors, as well as adding a button not being as controversial since, at worst, it would just go unused. The Wii was going in a different direction from the rest of the industry by using motion controls, and it did well. But like the 3D feature on the 3DS, it was a novelty when it came out and was abandoned by the majority of the industry later down the line.
And I got bad news for you. Great news for me and millions of others. Motion controls are a new form of standard. They're not the standard, but they are a standard, and they're not going anywhere. And thank God for that, because I want Wii Sports Resort 2. I want a new Boom Blocks type game. I want a Zack and Wiki type game. I want all those fun games, and I want games that I just control normal.
Okay, but will the
Games that I just control normal.
be the standard for most Switch games? What if hypothetically a major Nintendo IP had a new game that forced motion controls down everyone's throat and was hated for it?
To say that you're surprised that Nintendo put motion controls in these things is really weird to me. Because, you know, I mean, there's no sign that people don't want motion control games anymore. Like, what motion control game came out that failed? Like, recently, like with Wii U. There weren't really a lot of motion control games on the Wii U.
And at that part of the video, he was just ignoring me as if I wasn't even there. What's happening, Doc? Am I ugly? Does Josh hate me and just refuses to speak about me?
Well, Star Fox, this is an uneducated guess, but I think this BitBlock fellow refuses to acknowledge your existence because he either wants people to blindly believe him, or his desire to avoid scripting made it never occur to him that Star Fox Zero had tainted the idea of motion controls and gimmicks in general in the eyes of the consumers everywhere. But again, that's only a guess on my part.
Well, I guess. Don't you have a degree?
Nah, I'm not a doctor. I just broke in here and was posing as one.
What?
The part that really makes me raise an eyebrow is that he, ironically mind you, reviewed Star Fox Zero, so I wonder, why ignore it?
So yeah, I'm very pro motion control, and it's always annoying to me when people are like, I can't believe... I mean, when you first saw the Switch, because people were like, man, I didn't think they were going to do motion controls. When I first saw that reveal, I was like, okay, good, Nintendo's not doing motion controls anymore. And now I'm surprised that they are. When you saw them pull those 2 pieces of the controller off of the thing, you didn't think, oh, there's the new Wii Remote and Nunchuck? Like, did you really think these things weren't going to be motion controls? Like, how did you not see it coming?
Oh, I don't know. The fact that every game shown in the trailer was using buttons to control them? Hell, there were 2 parts where people were using the Joy-Cons as NES-style controllers. It's kinda hard not to assume it would be the standard-ish controls from the very beginning.
So next up, I talked about this a little bit when I mentioned the technical specs. One of the things I keep hearing people say, and it boggles my mind, which is easy to do because there's not a lot of stuff up here. There's just a lot of hair, a lot of blonde hair that I try to maintain in a hat right now. But people are really surprised that on stage Nintendo wasn't like, and here's a detailed analysis of all the technical specs behind the Switch. When has Nintendo ever done that? Nintendo's never been about the technical specs. They've never been like, hey, let's detail the tech specs to these people. Oh, it's got this type of a processor and this kind of a chip. You know when we're going to learn about the specs of the Switch? When somebody buys one and opens it up and then says what it is on the internet. Nintendo never comes out and says, this is what our system is. That's not a Nintendo thing to do.
Seriously? Why the f*** would anyone buy a device without knowing what's in the box? Because Nintendo made it? Well, if that's the case, then you have a low standard for the fandom you belong to. As for the it's not a Nintendo thing to do, well, making a device region-free using a universal charging cable for the Switch and including voice chat were not Nintendo things to do, but they did it anyway. So why stop there?
They're not really going to brag about their hardware and their techs and all that. They'll brag about the controllers and stuff.
Right, which is why the N64 was a powerhouse for the time, and prior to the original Xbox, the GameCube was leading in graphics. Nintendo only did the whole bragging about the controls when the Wii came out, and even then, they backpedaled with the Wii U, showing core titles like Metro Last Light running on the system.
And then finally, this one I might take a little bit of crap for, but I gotta say it. A lot of people always talk about third-party support when it comes to Nintendo. That's the most talked about thing, especially with the Switch. They're always talking about oh man, I've heard people say
We're also dropping third-party support. Apart from a few games like FIFA and Rayman, you're still not gonna be able to get anymore.
which is a little weird to me, because here's the deal. Aside from the NES and the Super Nintendo, third parties have abandoned Nintendo. They've not been with Nintendo for a long, long time. And it's true that we do get third-party games every generation, but as soon as competition came along, third parties moved over to Sega, they moved over to Sony. It's just not Nintendo's strength to have a lot of third-party games.
So you're acknowledging the fact that Nintendo has problems with getting good third-party games, and you're purposefully ignoring it. Wow. Okay, good luck trying to prove yourself in any future videos with that mentality.
So I don't understand why people don't just grasp this already. Get it through your head. Nintendo's console is never going to be the go-to console for third-party support. For a variety of reasons. For one thing, it's not going to sell as well. Doom and all those kinds of games like Assassin's Creed, Call of Duty, all those more core, gritty, realistic games, they're not going to sell as well in a Nintendo system. And I know you could say, well, the reason for that is because every time they make them, the Nintendo version is gimped in some way or it's late. And that's a legitimate complaint, that's a legitimate argument. But I think even if they weren't, even if it was the exact same thing, Nintendo's version would still be the weakest sales. And third parties would eventually say, why are we supporting the Switch? It's always the version that has the least amount of sales. Let's just focus on PC, Xbox, and the PlayStation.
Again, you're acknowledging that there's a problem, but you're not disproving it. In fact, you're justifying why the Switch will never get any of the major games people buy on the other platforms. And after the point I cut off, you bring up Nintendo's first-party IPs. While not wrong, you forget that not every customer will buy all of Nintendo's games. Some want FIFA, Madden, Skylanders, Call of Duty, etc. And the fact that Nintendo might not consistently get these games would make the average Joe wonder, what's the point when the other platforms have all those games and more?
I will say this. This is one of the things that annoys me. Why is it that Nintendo always gets so much crap for not having the hardcore third-party games, right? That's something we all have heard time and time again. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Nintendo needs it. I don't think they do. But Nintendo always gets so much crap for that, and it's always such a topic of conversation. But nobody ever talks about how the Xbox does not have a lot of family-friendly games. Nobody ever says, where's the Xbox's version of Mario? Where's the Xbox's party games? I mean, there's a few because of Kinect, but there's not a lot of them.
Minecraft? Look, from this video I understand that you've been ignoring the entire industry outside of Nintendo, but how are you not aware of the popularity of Minecraft with the kids? What about Rare? And as for the other examples, Halo seems to fit the play with your friends crowd that you seem to be obsessing over. Just because it doesn't fit what you'd break out at a get-together, that doesn't mean that it should be ignored.
Where's the Xbox's version of Mario Kart or like a Metroid type game? Where's any of the first party stuff on the Xbox or the PlayStation? Because it's not really that much.
Really? Really? Look, I could buy the complaints towards Microsoft since their non-Halo IPs are getting killed off by the second, but Sony? There's plenty of first-party exclusives to justify their glorified paperweight. Bloodborne, Infamous Second Son, all the Uncharted games, the definitive port of The Last of Us, Little Big Planet 3, Gravity Rush, Tearaway Unfolded. See, I can list off a bunch of games to sound smart, and in this case, I can back up my point since they're all diverse enough to accommodate a wide enough audience. And none of those games were made at the expense of third parties.
Or having enough variety. I mean, the Xbox is really mostly catered to a hardcore demographic, and they have very little in the way of a more casual, lighthearted experience. Why is that okay? Why is that okay, but Nintendo not having a lot of bloody, gritty, hardcore M-rated games, that's not okay. Nintendo needs to get that.
Well, for one, the audience of those hardcore, gritty games can appeal to adults who want that type of experience and refuse to play something like Mario Kart. Two, these type of gamers play for longer periods of time, thus justifying their purchase. Destiny's install base is a thing after all. And three, it'll show that Nintendo would have variety, especially since people can buy Skylanders and other types of kids games on their Xbox and PlayStation, whereas Nintendo tends to exclusively make kiddie-looking games with their M-rated titles being the exception. I doubt you or I agree, but this is what the average consumer tends to buy if sales for these games can be used as a trusted source.
Wanting Nintendo to have these big hardcore games to me is like saying, why doesn't Disney have a lot of movies where, it's a horror film with a lot of blood and guts? Because that's not what Disney specializes in, for the same way that's not what Nintendo specializes in.
No, this is bullshit land. Josh can ignore reality to make his nonsensical arguments all he wants. Get those stupid facts out of here. Also, Bayonetta's on the Wii U, and Fire Emblem Fates was aimed more at older teenagers with its fan service. Get good.
But I'm gonna ask you this. How many third-party games do you actually buy on the Nintendo consoles? Probably not a lot. And you could say, well, it's because there's not a lot of them on there, but I don't think you don't buy them. We don't buy them. Let's be honest. Nintendo fans, let's come clean. We're buying the Switch because we want Animal Crossing, we want Metroid, we want The Legend of Zelda, we want all the Nintendo stuff. That's why we're buying it. That's where majority of our money is going to go. And very rarely do we sneak out beyond the Nintendo pastures to see what's going on elsewhere.
Wow. Projection much? Look, outside of justifying why third parties should never even look at the Switch, let alone put games on it, you're using your buying habits specifically to make this claim. Also, hi Rayman Legends controversy. You know, the game that a lot of people bought a Wii U for and were collectively pissed when Ubisoft delayed it to make it multi-platform. How are you doing?
I don't think all this stuff about third parties needing to be on the system is really all that true. It'll be good if it happens, and Nintendo should try to get it to happen, but it's not going to be doom or gloom for Nintendo.
So Nintendo should get third-party support. It would be a good thing even if it gets third-party support, but they don't need third-party support, even though that's what led to the Wii U's downfall. What? Okay, now this would be the point where I'd go into final thoughts, but Josh made a follow-up video. And somehow it's much worse. How? Well, after watching all the straw manning ahead, I can take the not a fanboy spiel and throw it out the window. Don't believe me?
The Switch is going to fail because there's no third-party support!
No. Okay, how old are you? Seriously, you can't make this shit up. A grown-ass man-child defends a soulless corporation from all the voices of dissent using a shitty Waluigi impression. Look, there's nothing wrong with having a sense of humor, but I honestly can't see this as anything more than straw-manning, since all these realistic issues people have with the Switch are being treated as if only haters of Nintendo would say this. And really, the only thing this BS accomplishes is that it potentially avoids the negative feedback from all the fans of YouTubers that you're calling out by making a faceless opponent to fight against, as seen by the lower number of dislikes.
How am I supposed to enjoy the games if they're not in the 4K? 1080p? What is it, 1998? I need the 4K gaming!
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, a lot of people don't really own 4K TVs right now. And sure, in the future, maybe they will, they probably will, but it's not really a mainstream thing right now. Most people have a TV that is capable of 1080p. And so I don't think it's something Nintendo needs to rush into.
Let's just assume that the amount of people that own 4K TVs are even smaller than the group of people that own a Wii U. This still doesn't debunk your straw man's point. In fact, you debunk your own point by bringing up how 4K TVs are currently on the market, making all the complaints about how the Switch is underpowered and unable to output in 4K more valid. Also, let's look at Sony with the PS2 having a DVD drive while DVD players were still new, and the PS3 doing the same thing for Blu-rays, or Microsoft with Xbox Live being a console that justified online gaming outside of the PC market. Or hell, the PS4 Pro and Project Scorpio with gaming in 4K. Why is it that Sony and Microsoft can embrace new tech and strike while the iron is hot, but Nintendo can't? All you've proven here is that Nintendo will release an outdated piece of hardware onto the console market. Again!
But there is a patent from Nintendo essentially showing off an extra little box device that you would plug into the Switch dock, which would make it possible for the Switch to output in a 4K resolution.
That is a f***ing rumor. Nintendo makes patents for shit all the time. That doesn't confirm anything. If you need a rumor to defend the Switch, then all this shows is that your arguments are dead on arrival. Oh, and if someone's thinking that this rumor is from a trusted source, I wouldn't know since he doesn't link any of the sources in the description of either video, despite the claim here being so ridiculous that it needs something to back it up.
So yeah, the battery is a little minimal, obviously. It's, Nintendo said anywhere from 3 to 6 hours or 3 to 5.5 hours, something like that. And it's gonna depend on what kind of game you're playing. I think think there is a solution to this, honestly. You can get an external battery pack that you just have previously charged. When the Switch is about to die, when you're out and about playing, you're on an airplane, maybe the Switch battery's almost gonna die, just plug in that external battery pack and you'll get hours more of enjoyment out of your Switch on the go.
That doesn't undo the fact that the Switch's battery is useless on long trips, unlike, say, the 3DS XL, and the fact that Nintendo has shown people going on long trips in the ads for the system, making those ads misleading. You then go on to compare this to charging a smartphone, but here's the thing. That's a smartphone, a device that will use multiple apps that collectively will burn out the battery fast, compared to the Switch, which can only do one task, that being play video games, and burns out fast by default.
I just bought a brand new Nintendo Switch. I'm gonna play a game. Oh, wait a minute. It doesn't even come with a packing game. Even the Wii, which was a console for babies and grandmas, came in with a packing game. How is there no packing game?
So I have actually done a little bit of investigating, and the Nintendo Wii U, the Wii U system, actually cost $350. But that was cool because it came with a pack-in game, Nintendo Land. I almost said Nintendo World because I'm thinking about the theme park, the actual theme park. But Nintendo Land came packed in with the Wii U. But what people fail to realize is the Wii U was $350, and you got Nintendo Land. The Switch is $300, you don't get a pack-in, but you can buy a game for $50, 1-2 Switch, and so it'd bring the price to the same price as the Wii U. So I don't really know why so many people are calling out the fact that it doesn't have a pack-in game. If you want to spend an extra $50, you'll get the pack-in game, just like you did for the Wii U.
This makes no sense. Your straw man brought up a pack-in game for the Wii, that being Wii Sports, and you bring up the Wii U, a console that by many, including Nintendo, to be a financial bomb. Oh, and the Wii U with 32 gigabytes of internal memory was originally sold for $350 without a pack-in game. That might sound like a point in the Switch's favor, with it being cheaper compared to the Wii U, but unless you're into party games, launch titles like 1-2 Switch will be bargain bin fodder at best.
Complain about, but I do agree that in the holiday season of 2017, I think Nintendo needs to pack in 1-2 Switch for free, and I think they will do it.
Okay, ignoring the fact that you proved your straw man right with the lack of a pack-in game not being a good thing, you're using your gut feeling to prove that 1-2 Switch will be a pack-in game during the holidays. What? Is confirmation of anything considered illegal now, or am I just losing my mind?
I mean, you know, part of me thinks, yeah, Nintendo should have that game as well, but then another part of me thinks, I don't know, I don't really buy a Nintendo system to play a game that's available on like 5 other platforms. I don't really know why you need to have all these third-party games available on every system. Like, if you already own an Xbox, or you already own a PlayStation, or already have, like, Steam on your PC, why is it so important to also be able to get that game on the Switch?
Because not everyone can own all 4 platforms. Why do you think that third-party exclusives get so much of a bad rap? If you can only afford one platform, why invest in a system that goes against your standing as a consumer since you won't get the most bang for your buck? Just wondering, are you paid by Nintendo? Because if so, then it's illegal to not clear that up in the beginning of the video. I ask because no sane human being of their own volition would argue that having more games to choose from is a bad thing.
What I want from third parties are original games made exclusively for the Switch.
So, no games at all, okay? Seriously though, unless you're going with a super low budget efforts from third-party devs, the Switch will get nothing since more platforms increase the sources of income. Yes, there were some third-party exclusives shown off, but how long until these games go multiplat? The cynical part of me is seeing another Rayman Legends situation in the near future.
I need to pay an extra $90 for a dock so I can play my Switch in another room. Oh, I have my Switch in the living room. Now I want to play the Switch in my bedroom. But I gotta unplug the whole thing to bring it in, or I have to pay $90 for a dock. I'm not made of money. I'm made of blood and guts, not the money.
So this is a weird complaint that I've heard people use. A lot of people are like, oh my god.
No. The Switch is marketed as a portable device that you can take anywhere. Of course people would want an extra dock, just in case the TV that they're using is taken up, and the fact that it's almost $100 is egregious. You then go on to make a PS4 and Xbox One comparison, but those two are not marketed for portability, unlike the Switch. This was an incredibly dumb argument, and all pretenses that you're not a fanboy go from out the fucking window into the depths of space, never to be seen again. The last few points were already tackled in the earlier video, so final thoughts. Look, I'm all for looking at things with a glass half full perspective. After all, too much cynicism can be a bad thing. But what you did in both videos was fanboying to a ridiculous degree. Nintendo made many mistakes over the last few years, and people are rightfully approaching the Switch with skepticism. Do I think that the Nintendo Switch will fail? No. Mostly because I can see the gimmick of taking a console experience on the go resonating with a lot of people, and the biggest names for the Wii U will be on the Switch within the first year. That and, Pokemon Stars. That's a thing. I also want to address the comment that you pinned on the top of your second video. To paraphrase, you were tough on Nintendo during the Wii U era, but you were more lenient in the Switch era, only to still get negative feedback. I can't speak for your Wii U related videos since I'm not going to go through all of them, but from these two videos, all I can say is that ignoring basic problems with the console is still an issue on your part, since it seems like all Nintendo has to do is one thing right and all their faults disappear miraculously. The Switch isn't perfect, and I doubt Breath of the Wild alone will keep the console afloat forever. Here's some food for thought. What caused the Switch to do well in marketing, and include good features like USB-C outlets, was because of all the criticism the Big N was getting. So you telling people to stop criticizing will only lead to a complacent company. Kinda like Nintendo when they released the Wii U.
Well, I was never expecting to actually do a video on this topic. Persona 5! And a commentary to boot! Now, this will be a short video, mainly due to the fact that, well, the video I'm covering is about a minute or so long.
Then what's the point in doing a commentary on it? That's what I meant when I said this video's mere existence bothered me. Lore videos are incredibly short, with their main series of Lore in a Minute, as the title says, being only a minute long. So I find that making an entire commentary hate on such a short video to be incredibly pointless. I'm not saying that the video can't be criticized because it's a minute long, but I feel that making a video on it is unnecessary, and you could have just left a comment on the video, as not only would it likely be pretty short considering what your counter arguments in this video are, but it would also take much less time to actually do.
Metal, why are you making a big deal about this? The original video being short shouldn't matter in the long run. The deciding factor for making a commentary should be whether the video was flawed or not. As for the point about leaving a comment, while I could see this being a perfect counter-argument to, say, a one-shot, where really there's only one point being made about one small section of the video, Manga is tackling the entire video, and even using clips to provide his points later in this commentary. The latter of which would be very hard to convey using just words. Not to mention, if Manga did comment on the video, there's the risk of it getting flagged, drowned in hate, deleted by the channel, or YouTube just glitching out and it vanishing forever.
Plus, one of the many reasons why I dislike the commentary community is that a lot of the things they do come off as being desperate for attention. And this is an example of that because, not gonna lie, when I first saw this, I immediately said, how desperate can you get? And I know that's a very mean thing to say, but still, it gives me the impression that you really needed to find something to complain about.
Someone's desperate for approval.
Personally, I would just ignore videos like this unless I was doing it within a collection of other videos as part of a series, like with 1 Minute Melee and DBX, because individually, they aren't something that actively bother me or that I strongly disagree with.
Alright, now I'm confused. How is this video desperate? Because it's a short commentary on a short video? Look, instead of repeating the point that I just made earlier, I'll say this. An actual sign of desperation would be making this commentary on Lore's video the day after it came out, while knowing little to nothing about the product, having no interest in Persona 5, and wanting to ride off the first week hype train for the views. This just looks like Manga wanted to talk about Persona 5, and conveniently found material talking about the game in the same month the game was out.
Meet Lore, a channel that does minute-long videos on cartoons, video games, and other things when I realize, and basically gives like a summarized version of the lore of the games or whatever they're covering. In addition, they get other people to voice the videos. So I guess this is more appropriate to be covering two channels at once, since this one was voiced by Octopimp, who appears to be an anime channel? I don't know. Okay, when I say this, I am asking a legitimate question here. Do you know how lore videos actually work? Because all Octopimp did was voice in the video, yet he's getting equal blame for it. When making a Lore in a Minute video, the lore team writes out a script summarizing the lore of the specific installment or series that they are covering, and then they get another YouTuber, or in some cases a voice actor, who typically has something related to the topic. For example, when they did the lore video on Mega Man X, they got Eagle Raptor to do the voiceover. But in most cases, they end up either using Octopimp or Dodger. It's very similar to Digino Gaming, where all the facts in their videos have already been posted on the website, but they collect a bunch of them related to a specific topic, and generally get a YouTuber who has some sort of relation to that topic. Whoever does the voiceover has no impact on the script or information that is presented in the video. Therefore, Octopimp is in no way responsible for the errors present in Lore's video. Additionally, since you decide to specifically mention Octopimp's channel, in which you question if he's an anime channel or not, if you were to scroll through his videos, you'll see that none of them are in any way related to the Persona series, which means that it's entirely possible that he doesn't play or even know much about Persona. So as such, he would have been unable to notice the mistakes in Lore's script and speak up about it. You could argue that they should have gotten someone who knows stuff about the game to do the voice, so that they could point out errors, but you don't, so I'm still going to fault you for that. So let me tell everyone the real story behind Lore's video. Lore wrote a script of the summarized plot setup of Persona 5 with some mistakes in there, and then they got Octopimp to do the voiceover because he's voiced in a lot of other Lore videos in the past, and because getting an anime channel to talk about Persona isn't too far of a stretch, seeing as how the series has a very anime style, with all the main characters being high school students, and a talking cat, but mostly high school students, and because Octopimp knows little or nothing about the game, he was unaware of the mistakes when reading out the script for the video. By crediting Octopimp in the title of this commentary, you have completely manipulated this scenario to make it appear like Octopimp is responsible for the problems with the video, when he isn't. He only did the voice. And it's not even like you try to prove that he had some involvement in the video outside of voice work. You're just all like, well, since they get people to voice, I guess it's more appropriate for this to be a commentary on 2 channels!
All of this bitching and moaning over one line. All of which is to regurgitate information manga already said, along with a massive assumption that manga was partially blaming the video's quality on Octopimp. But if you were to perk an ear up, you might have noticed that from his line delivery, manga was more weirded out from the random casting choice rather than blaming anyone. Not to mention, Lore credited Octopimp for his voiceover in the video, so why can't manga bring it up? Also,
He doesn't play or even know much about Persona.
how do you know this? Because he hasn't made a video talking about Persona? From his channel, it looks like Octopimp is a casual gamer and really isn't interested in talking about video games as much as playing them. Not to mention, this only validates manga being weirded out with the odd casting choice.
Plus, I find this whole blaming Octopimp thing to be super hypocritical because Doodle Tones made a response to some sort of live stream you did with some other people, which I'm not trying to butt in on because it's none of my business.
This is none of my business. Now if you'll excuse me, I'll be taking a random comment talking about this subject, effectively making it my business. Yeah, 10 out of 10 logic, GG, WP, time to KMS, you DUMBASS. And what is this all for? Some nebulous hypocrisy argument built on broken foundation? What? You don't see it? Well, there's the apples to oranges comparison, as a scripted video is being compared to a live stream where everyone's talking off the top of their heads. The fact that this drama is being brought up for a point that manga never even made in the video. Oh, and side note, manga apologized for the potential damage his live stream did in the comment that you're showing. This point is sitting right in front of you. How are you missing this?
Our reality, there exists a realm known as the Palace. Less than 10 seconds. I'd say that'd be a record, but on this channel, that's So essentially, this calls into question a few things, since no, the other reality isn't called the Palace, it's called the Metaverse. While yes, the players do go to palaces, they're manifestations of the Metaverse created by strong desires by people. Now, while to those who haven't played Persona 5, this may sound like a nitpick, but considering that the Metaverse is the driving factor of the plot, and pretty much hammered into the player as you go through the game, this comes off as a really bad sign. While yes, the other world in Persona 5 is called the Metaverse and not the Palace, in the grand scheme of things, this is just a small and understandable name slip-up, because palaces are not only manifestations within the Metaverse, but they're also the only areas within the Metaverse that you actually explore during gameplay.
This doesn't disprove manga's point, though. The Metaverse appears to be an alternate universe that the characters enter into, with the palaces being the major locations within the Metaverse where stuff happens.
Even Mementos, because Morgana stresses that Mementos is just the palace of the general public of Tokyo. So outright saying that the other world is called a palace isn't such a massive error, because it isn't that far off from the truth. I'm not excusing them for making the mistake, but I can understand how they ended up doing that. Meaning that this further plays towards how I find this commentary to be so unnecessary, seeing as how this mistake isn't anything major.
But it's still an error, though. Why is manga not allowed to bring this up? The general idea with commentaries is to bring up issues with the video. This was an issue with the video. It detracted from manga's viewing experience with the video. That and the Metaverse is part of Persona 5's lore, so it only makes sense to bring it up since it's part of the backstory and lore.
Hell, I didn't find out that the other world was called the Metaverse until around the point where you explore Mementos for the first time, which, at least for me, was around 10 hours into the game. And even then, sometimes when the characters are referring to the Metaverse, they call it names such as that other world or the cognitive world, rather than the Metaverse.
Yet manga never said it was early on, he said it was throughout the game. This goes into a flawed point about Atlus's copyright bullshittery, but I'll get to that later.
So I'm left with a few thoughts in my head. One, that no one bothered to look this over to make sure, hey, we should probably get our facts straight. Two, that this video was made by people who not only know the bare bones of the game and didn't bother to look up the basic fact of said game. Or three, that these people are only trying to capitalize on the game's popularity and threw this together as quick as they could. Oh, great. It's the whole, let's just assume that people do things for the worst reasons with absolutely no proof whatsoever to make them look as bad as possible, which the commentary community loves doing. Or as it's more commonly referred to as, character assassination. I'm sorry for getting so angry about this, but I absolutely cannot stand it when people do this shit, since all they do is take a good-natured person and attempt to damage their nice image for no good reason. In this case, Manga Comment makes it look like Lore only cares about money and views by accusing them of rushing out the video to capitalize on Persona 5's popularity. And while he brings up other potential reasons, which is more than what most people do, that's still the one he places the greatest emphasis on, which gives the impression that he's saying that one is the most likely possibility. If you just said that you felt they rushed it, then I would have no issue with that, because I can understand how you could come to that conclusion. But for no reason, you decide to add on to capitalize on the game's popularity. In which, do you have any proof that that's why they did it? No!
While I do agree that the last idea the manga came to was a bit harsh for such a small mistake, what you took from it was that Lore makes these videos for money. Which isn't too outlandish, since a lot of people run their channels like businesses anyway, and would take advantage of a game's popularity regardless of rushing the video or not. Also, does he have proof? Dude, Lore videos on modern games come out during the week of the subject's release date. It's usually during that time that people are searching out for the information about the game, and subsequently videos talking about it. Hell, cashing out on the game's popularity is the least offensive thing that could be said about it, seeing as manga claimed that they didn't even bother to look up the basic facts about the game. Kamen Rider. Bro. The majority of information said here is correct, as seen from you skipping a few times in the video. To say they didn't look up any information is kinda sorta exaggerating the mistake.
And if you were to look up other Lore videos on then newly released and upcoming games, then you'll find that they are much more accurate, meaning that the mistakes in the Persona 5 video are far more likely to just be legitimate mistakes that any person can make, rather than being a result of rushing it out to capitalize on the game's popularity. Plus, with the whole capitalizing on Persona 5's popularity, if I really wanted to, I could say the exact same thing about this commentary, seeing as how unnecessary it is to me, and because of how excited you were to find an excuse to talk about Persona 5.
That doesn't undo the fact that this is still a mistake, and most likely that it was done while trying to meet the deadline, which was Persona 5's international release. This also undermines the fact that each Lore video was written by a different person, so this mostly good track record means nothing in the grand scheme of things.
I covered my tale if this was a joke. Well, it certainly didn't come off like that, especially since it was the first point in the entire video and there was no punchline. You can say that I cut them off, but having watched this entire video, the comedy here comes from the visuals and the slight vocal joke near the end that could be barely considered a joke at all.
What? How was that in any way a joke? It was clearly a serious statement, and you only spend this section proving how it wasn't a joke, which makes it entirely pointless. I mean, I know that the commentary community will believe that anything is a joke, but that's only in commentaries themselves. On any video that isn't titled as a commentary, they take everything people say way too seriously.
And the majority of people casually watching will go to the defense for the video saying, "It's just a joke, bruh," which will require that the presenter either account for this or disprove that it's a joke altogether. Not helping is that Lore videos have a subtle bit of humor within their videos, with that bit at the end, so it only makes sense to clear up whether something was a joke or not. Also, hindsight seems to be on the Griffin's side as well, seeing as a little while after tackling this video, manga tackled Silohawk, and got the response of, "It was satire," or "It's just a joke." Basically, an excuse to tell manga to stop criticizing the video. Yeah, this is the part of the video where major spoilers happen. Skip to this part of the video to avoid spoilers. Alright, let's continue.
Initially, the palace encompassed humanity's hopes and dreams, but soon the ambitions of adult authority figures corrupted both the palace and the real world. Except, and feel free to say I'm splitting hairs here, how did Futaba's palace do that? Palaces in Persona 5 are conditions of an individual with strong desires, and it's stated that pretty much anyone who has a desire strong enough can create a palace in the metaverse. Considering that one of the palaces you go to in the game is a gat of Futaba's, a 15-year-old girl, it's not just adults. No, Lore never said that only adults could have palaces. They said that adults were the cause behind the corruption of the metaverse, and in Futaba's case, that still applies. This is because at this part, you completely fail to look at the reason why Futaba's palace Palace exists in the first place, which is a pretty big thing to overlook, seeing as how the treasures that the Phantom Thieves steal take the form of whatever caused that individual's desires to become destroyed in the first place. Especially in the case of Futaba's Palace, because the story behind it is plastered all over the place. Futaba's Palace exists because her mother, Wakaba, committed suicide due to a psychotic breakdown in which a group of men in black suits, who were the ones who caused the psychotic breakdown in the first place, forged a suicide note to pin the blame on Futaba by making it look like Wakaba killed herself because Futaba was being a pain in the ass. As a result, not only did Futaba blame herself for her mother's death, but her relatives also verbally abused her by saying things such as, "You killed her," and calling her a murderer. Because of this, Futaba ends up wishing that she was dead, which manifests into her palace as it takes the form of a pyramid because she views Sojiro's house as her tomb. The reason why Futaba's palace exists is because of the actions of those men in black and her abusive relatives, who are all adults. Even Futaba alludes to this herself when confronting the cognitive version of her mother. Therefore, lore isn't wrong on this point, especially since they also specifically mention adults impacting the real world, as the actions of the men in black and Futaba's relatives occurred within the real world, which had ramifications on the metaverse. Considering how this commentary is supposed to be pointing out plot details that lore skipped over, with manga comment effectively saying the truth about the plot, this is also hypocritical because you completely looked over important plot details as well. Again, irony. But there is one other major issue I have with bringing up Futaba's Palace as a counter-argument.
Okay, this is one of the weirder parts of the video, as neither person in this section was wrong. How is that even possible? Well, the part that's not right was lore. Specifically how they framed this information in this section. They said that the palaces were corrupted by adult authority figures, implying the palaces are locations and that adults took them over, not a product made by an individual with strong desires. So manga arguing that Futaba made her palace isn't necessarily wrong. Metal's point about Futaba was also correct, but the original piece of info that lore presented, what Metal was defending after all, was not well conveyed.
Being that when Persona 5 was released, Atlus had a very strict stance on people posting spoilers of the game, in which people would face copyright strikes if they did. One of these spoilers was that nobody was allowed to post anything about the game after the 11th of July. And when do you first go to Futaba's Palace? The 25th of July. While later on Atlus softened their stance on this, in which they pushed back the cutoff date to the 19th of November, Lore's video was uploaded the very next day after Persona 5's international release. So even if they did know about Futaba having a palace, they couldn't say it or hint at it, otherwise they could have had their video taken down.
There is one ginormous problem here. Reading what you put on screen, it appears that Atlus's rules would only take down walkthroughs, live streams, and let's plays of Persona 5. Almost everything mentioned here talks about showcasing sections of the game, not talking about Persona 5, just recorded gameplay that people put online. Since lore videos consist of original animation, what they're doing is 100% void of Atlus's copyright bullshittery. Yeah, I'm speaking in hypotheticals, but from what you're showing, it is possible to upload a video around Persona 5's release date, spoiling the game like crazy with nothing but a black screen, and nothing would happen.
You are a new student at Tokyo's Shujin Academy, when a classmate is abused by the school gym teacher. Now, this is the point on presentation rather than the actual lore here. I immediately knew that this was a huge mess up. For one, this scene is actually from a different point in the game. The point in which the protagonist confronted a man who was harassing a woman in the streets. This scene has nothing to do with what's being said here at the time. And I wouldn't make so much of a big deal about this, except one of the first scenes of this entire video had the gym teacher Kamoshida in it. Why put that scene here? Because that has nothing to do with what you're saying. Heck, you could just put Kamoshida right there. We already know you know about it. Alright, that's it. It's time for a change. This part is the other reason why I find manga comment pinning the blame on Octopimp to be super hypocritical. This part of the video, where they're referring to Kamoshida's abuses but show the scene in which Masayoshi Shido is sexually harassing a woman in the street, the error in this part of the video is solely to do with the animation, which you admit yourself, and even say that there's nothing wrong with what's being said. This also links back to me getting the impression that you don't know how lore videos work, because as well as getting a YouTuber to voice in the videos, they also get an animator to do, well, the animations. In the case of the Persona 5 video, the animations were done by Hagen Tunes, if I'm pronouncing that right. Now, I'm not saying that the animator is to blame either, because I don't know how lore videos are handled from the animation side of things, so it's possible that lore just tells them what to animate, and they do as instructed. But seeing as how manga comment's stance on this video is pretty much, if they had anything to do with the video, however minor, they should be credited with being responsible, why is the animator getting a free pass?
Alright, ignoring that point about Octopimp for a moment, it's still lore's job to handle the visuals to show what should and shouldn't be on screen, as this appears to be bad direction and less that the animator made a mistake. It's akin to having a good voice actor, but bad voice direction. Blaming the animator would only make sense if the characters were animated poorly. But seeing as manga, a guy who has critiqued someone's art assets before, never brought up how the video looked, it makes sense to put the responsibility back onto lore for bad direction. Might I remind you, all of this is to hammer in a counter-argument for a point that manga never actually made.
But that's not all. there is actually a reason why Law doesn't show Kamoshida at this part. Going back to Atlus's initially strict stance on spoilers about Persona 5, they also went over how people should discuss the game with others without spoiling it, in which they gave a specific good and bad example. In the bad example, which shows how people shouldn't spoil the game for others, it says, players immediately run into trouble with the pervy teacher, Spoiler, whose actions go so far as to cause spoiler. While Kamoshida, or more specifically his shadow, appears in the video, they never refer to him by name or even say who he is or what he does. He's just there. So it falls in line with the guidelines set by Atlus, in which you can't call Kamoshida by name or say what exactly he does.
So, showing the wrong scene makes far more sense than spoiling something that happens early on in the game. What? So wait, lore showing the first boss, which is the same guy mind you, is fair, but simply showing his human form would be going too far. How? Hell, you can put what's-his-face in both scenes without naming him and it would still fall under Atlus's guidelines, which might I remind you is for gameplay only. The rest of the video has nothing to talk about since everything mentioned afterwards requires that you buy the idea that Atlus's BS copyright rule could affect what is technically fan animation, so, final thoughts. I would just recap the video, but I have a more interesting point to make. So throughout the video, there's all this mention of the commentary community.
Plus, one of the many reasons why I dislike the commentary community is that a lot of the things they do come off as being desperate for attention. Let's just assume that people do things for the worst reasons with absolutely no proof whatsoever to make them look as bad as possible, which the commentary community loves doing. Or as it's more commonly referred to as, character assassination. I mean, I know that the commentary community will believe that anything is a joke, but that's only in commentaries themselves. On any video that isn't titled as a commentary, they take everything people say way too seriously.
Now I could break out the excuse that manga gave, that being that he really doesn't identify with the same niche as guys like Ryan, Godslayer, Doodletones, etc. But I feel that wouldn't work, since people in the CC, what's left of it anyhow, are using OCs and have a similar video format to Kamen Rider over here, so it's not unfounded to draw a connection. Where I object is the need to put everyone, regardless of where they stand, into the same camp. A community does not consist of just one person, so I find it very questionable to bring up the entire CC throughout the video. Manga Kamen only represents one person, himself. Honestly, it seems like you only responded to this video because you're still salty about that little spat you had with Realm Wars and the backlash that followed afterwards. All of which has long since passed by the time you made this video. And yes, I can tell. Seeing as all 3 points sound like you're regurgitating your issues with Realm Wars' commentary on you, as well as everyone else that participated in that bandwagon. The only thing I can recommend at this point is to put your personal issues with the commentary community off to the side and stick to the facts, as the chunk of the video that I skipped around the end of your video was just that. Or you can continue to be as ass-hurt as possible. That's also an option. Not a good one, mind you.
So here's the truth. The Blue Yeti is a $100 stainless steel toy. Everything good you heard about it, forget it. They're lies born from hobbyists with no concept of quality. Well, actually, Weegee, I can already hear droves of you typing. I have a Yeti, and I'll have you know that it is a high-quality, great-sounding microphone that rivals studio-grade equipment. Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. I just need to stop you right there, because you're pretty horribly wrong, actually.
Yeah, nice condescending opening and stuff. However, there's a little problem here. No person I've ever heard that recommended the Blue Yeti ever claimed that it's studio-grade quality, you numbnuts. When I was looking up videos on the Blue microphones, the most that I've heard about the Yeti is that it's a great quality microphone, if a bit on the expensive side, and that it's better than the average low-quality headset that most people start out with. If there is a group of people exaggerating the virtues of the Yeti, then please, direct me to them. Because even if this was meant to be a joke, you're effectively addressing a group that might not even exist.
But hey, don't just take my word for it. Allow me to demonstrate. My name's Weegee the God, and I spend 14 hours a day watching Family Guy funny moments. My name's Weegee the God, and I spend 14 hours a day watching Family Guy funny moments.
Alright, first of all, you're comparing a $130 microphone to a setup that combined will range into the hundreds, if not breaking $1,000 in terms of price range. That alone should be an indication on how faulty this video is. Who the hell is this video made for? The 1%? The average YouTuber can barely afford to spend $100 on a simple recording apparatus, and now you're claiming that even that's not good enough to record basic audio. And what's the end goal here? Being a shithead on YouTube? Man, this video is a pain in the ass to watch, but oh, listen to this audio quality. It became a good video all of a sudden, cause that's how logic works. What's doubly pointless here is that with those little artifacts you heard, most if not all of them could be removed with the majority of audio editors. Hell, the one that I'm using right now, Audacity, was able to fix very similar audio issues back when I was using much worse microphones with just a few clicks. This program is free, by the way. Now, I don't have much to say about the next few points, as it's a basic explanation on how sound cards work, except for the fact that the alternatives might not seem like much of an upgrade to the average Joe, since sounding better than a shitty headset is what the majority of people are aiming for. Also,
the same exact thing can be said for the hardware connected to them as well. Manufacturers of USB microphones,
except for the part where that isn't a USB mic, it's an XLR microphone. The same kind that you recommend later in the video, might I add. In fact, this isn't the only scene where you show a different type of microphone in place of a USB mic. So at this point I'm left wondering if even you know what you're talking about.
Believe it or not, that nice and shiny $100 Yeti that every prosumer claims to be so amazing is actually more or less just a $50 snowball wrapped in a slightly flashier package at double the price. Even if you're a casual consumer who's only creating content or doing voiceovers as a fun hobby, the Yeti would still be a complete waste. There are so many other USB mics out there, such as the Blue Snowball or Radio Shack USB, that sound exactly the same but are a fraction of the Yeti's price, so there's absolutely zero reason to waste your money on this thing.
You know, minus the slightly better stand and a few extra features built into the microphone itself, some of which include several audio settings for the mic which will adjust where and how it's used. Oh, and that volume switch and mute button in front of the frickin' microphone. The latter of which is odd, seeing as you seem to be the type to jerk off to your own reflection, so I'd assume you'd know what a knob looks like. You can say all these features are minuscule at best, but these are features that you won't get on the other, cheaper microphones, and having them on hand would be convenient. Not to mention the fact that you're going to be recommending that we spend hundreds to thousands of dollars later in the video to go somewhere. So when did saving money become an important factor?
Correct. Now, I want to again make it clear that USB microphones can work just fine for more casual applications, but it's important to recognize the drawbacks that come with them and accept the fact that you'll go nowhere as a creator or artist as long as you're using one.
These terms, creator and artist, are being used in such a broad fashion that I can only mislead people. The only channels that will benefit from your replacement for the Yeti have already gone somewhere and have grown to the point where studio levels of quality have become a standard for their videos. The only other group of people that I could see taking this advice are people getting into different fields than whatever the fuck you're doing, like voice acting and such. This also undermines the quality of the work the recordings are made for. Good audio recording is one thing, but if it's for a video that no one wants to watch, then what's the point? This video isn't made for people who want to go anywhere. I honestly have no clue what this nonsense is aimed for, to be perfectly honest. And at this point I'm just wondering if this video just exists to show off his expensive recording setup in the same way that a rich kid shows off his expensive toys.
The recording environment. You got any background noise? Fans, computer, air conditioner, heater, lawnmower, construction, mom yelling at you to do your homework? Well, go handle it. It's going to get picked up on your mic, and it's going to ruin your recording. Another massive component to this are echoes. They're bad. Shut your door and clap your hands. You hear any echoing? If so, handle that too. Go to Amazon, buy some RLX acoustic paneling, and cover your walls and ceiling. Pro tip, make sure to pay extra attention to covering any and all corners, because that's where sound waves like to bounce around and amplify the most. If you want to save some money, you can hang up things like big blankets and foam beds around your recording room instead, but it's gonna look like you live in a third world disaster relief shelter, so, I mean, that's kind of up to you.
Also, if you don't have a carpet floor, you're really gonna want a carpet floor.
Wow, that's a nice setup you advised me to have. Problem though, couldn't this setup be used with any USB mic to produce good sounding audio as well? Hell, an enclosed room with carpet, like the one I'm recording in, can get the job done just fine. If you need proof that most of this stuff is optional, MattPat from Game Theory, a totally obscure and unsuccessful channel by the way, was able to last quite a while by recording in his closet, so it isn't the life or death scenario that you're making this out to be. The rest of the video is him going into facts about getting better audio recording equipment and his recommendations for components, which seems fine, but I'd rather learn this info from someone that isn't guilty of blatant plagiarism. Yeah, I might as well address the elephant in the room now. This video blatantly steals many lines from another YouTuber, Soul Brother. Soul Brother made a multi-part educational video to let people know how to get better overall audio quality to get into the voice acting industry. The fact that the Blue Yeti is ill-advised was simply one small part of a far more complex topic, not the subject of the whole damn video. The goal of Soul Brother's original video was to inform people with a passion for voice acting on the how-tos when it comes to making the most of their talents, compared to Knob over here who's complaining about shit that can be fixed in Audacity, and complaining about consumers using a consumer-level product to its full potential. Hell, quoting the same facts is one thing, but how's about the exact same recommendations on what components to buy? Or the same jokes for that matter.
Tell you the Blue Yeti is a $100 stainless steel toy. Everything good you heard about it, forget it. They're lies born from hobbyists with no concept of quality. This goes for all USB mics, not just the Yeti.
Oh, but what about
all USB mics.
At this point, it stops being a reference and just becomes a lazy copy and paste fest of someone else's work. So not only is this video taking research someone else did and presenting it like it was his own, Weegee found a way to make several points come off as wrong from how he presented these facts. Aside from the plagiarism, the title of the video deserves credit for how incredibly retarded it is. I mean, not only is it desperate clickbait, but it also finds a way to undermine the point Soul Brother's original video made by putting the equipment above the person using it. Really, the only thing missing here is for the title to be in all caps to be top tier YouTube garbage. I mean, Knob worked so hard Control-C, Control-V-ing the video together, he totally deserves the views compared to the people that actually did the work. Oh, but wait, the audio quality is really nice. I guess that makes all these issues minuscule due to how professional this blatant plagiarism is. To cover my bases, yes, he does cite Soul Brother as a source in the description, but he claims to have only borrowed a few quotes, not the whole fucking video. As for the twitlonger claiming to address the issue, as far as I'm concerned, it's just a band-aid on a tumor, as it only exists for Weegee to cover his ass after people were calling him out. What isn't helping is that he really wants to double down on the idea that those similar-sounding lines, Lyle McDouchebag pointed out, were simple references and not stolen lines. All the other similar-sounding lines go without mention, so it's obviously a response to Lyle because he was loud enough to affect him. And if Weegee wants to convey that what he did was wrong, then his latter tweets aren't exactly convincing me otherwise. Unless Weegee makes a follow-up video to clear things up, or disowns the video entirely, then all these complaints will still hold up, and will still apply if he pulls this shit again. But just to hammer how abysmal this video is, let me nail this coffin shut with one little point from the middle-ish part of the video.
Again, there is an ocean of variety when it comes to hardware, and with over 7 billion different voices in the world, it mainly boils down to what works best for you. Person 1 might sound great on setup A, but bad on setup B, and person 2 might sound bad on setup A, but great on setup B. Doesn't mean one of those setups is necessarily worse or overpriced or anything like that. It means there's a lot of variables that go into this, and the possibilities are practically endless.
It kinda makes me wonder why the Blue Yeti doesn't fall into this endless amount of possibilities out there, especially since the quality to price ratio is still a factor to many people on YouTube. Alright, I smacked Babyface around enough times, let's move on to final thoughts. When I saw this in my recommended videos, I saw a desperate clickbait video that seemed to be made to let people know that there's better options out there when it comes to recording their voice. After rewatching and learning more about the backstory, I want to burn this video an infinite amount of times. This video doesn't help anyone that wants to get into video making. It won't mean much to voice actors since that's not what this channel is aiming for. And the whole thing is built on a no shit argument. Yeah, a $1,000+ setup sounds nicer than my $60 Snowball or most people's $130 Yeti. But unless you're successful already, then that won't mean jack shit in the long run. Going back to the plagiarism issues, watching part 1 of Soul Brother's video tells me that his focus was on the talent of the voice actor and not wanting them to be held back due to the limitations of their equipment. You're putting the equipment in the forefront as if somehow that makes a difference in the long run. Unless of course you're trying to tell me that good sounding audio was the only reason why people subbed to you in the first place and not the quality of your content. To be fair, I'd buy that. The sad part is that there's a small chance YouTube itself will compress parts of the video, meaning that the audio difference could be so microscopic that it won't even be worth it in the long run. Unless of course you're using some really good software that these mics are often paired up with. Oh right, you don't even go into that part of audio quality in the video, so good job leaving people in the dark, you condescending misinformative prick.
Oh, but he updated the description to account for all the mistakes he made.
Only one of the issues he addressed I brought up, and seeing as he couldn't get the facts right proves that the video as a whole is still trash.
Oh, but he talked things out with Soul Brother.
Yet the information claiming that he plagiarized is more widespread, so it only makes sense to make a follow-up video to clear up the confusion. It's not like follow-ups are a new thing to his channel after all. Also, I'm left wondering why the person criticizing Weegee is referred to as a desperate loser. I guess being ass-heard is far more professional than having audio artifacts, right Weegee? Yeah, I don't know where to end the video to put this and have it sound natural, so I'll just stick it here at the end. The reason why Weegee won't make a follow-up is because he can't make one and come out with any self-respect left intact. All the plagiarism accusations were proven true by Weegee paying Soul Brother an undisclosed amount of money to drop the issue entirely. A special thanks to BobVids for making these two videos talking about the subject and clearing up the confusion. Link to both videos will be in the description. So recently I made a change to my channel, and I kinda feel it's necessary to inform people about it, just to avoid anyone from getting confused with what I'm gonna be doing moving forward. This is completely unrelated to the last video, so if you recently subscribed for that, then a quick history lesson for something that'll quickly become irrelevant. I used to make commentary videos in the vein of people like, say, Doodletone, Spoonslayer, Acroloth, Ponder Sprocket, etc. Those videos gained a following, but I lost interest in making them, and now I do other videos. I'm making this video to let people know where all those commentary videos went. TLDR, they are now unlisted, and if you're in the small demographic that wants to rewatch them for whatever reason, you can look for the playlist on my channel or in the description of this video. And no, I don't hate these videos, nor do I look back at them with shame. I feel like some good points were made and some fun was had. I just don't like the image that these older videos paint for my channel, and moving forward, it would make more sense for a clean slate. I mean, I wanted to change the direction of my channel at the beginning of 2018, so the next logical step is to soft reboot everything and then move on for 2019. Now, initially I was going to leave these videos public in their own little bubble, but a new problem arose. Some new viewers gravitated to my channel, and usually it was through my more popular videos, as a video with somewhere between, say, 10,000 to 100,000 views tend to get picked up by the broken algorithm that obsesses over watch time above anything else. This led to some people assuming that I still make these commentary videos because nobody watches update videos, and subscribed exclusively for videos that will never be made. I mean, the other popular video that people would end up seeing is that Overwatch video, but at least that one is related to the genre of video that I like, so it's sticking around. A more optimistic person might argue that the fans of these videos could become fans of my newer stuff, but from my experience, the people that watch commentaries don't overlap much with people that like my other stuff. I mean, there are a few, but I'd argue that the vast majority of my commentary-specific audience see my countdowns as filler videos, when initially it was the other way around. A far more cynical way to look at this would conclude that some YouTubers would rather watch someone that complains about everything under the sun rather than actually feel joy or engagement with the subject. Because let's be honest, bitching and moaning about the trendy topic of the week is the only way to get noticed around here. Aside from video essays, which is the newest bandwagon everyone's jumping on and oversaturating YouTube with. To reiterate, for the handful of people that want to watch these videos, you can simply look for them on the commentary playlist on my channel, or click the link I'll provide in the description. This channel is moving forward, and I'll be focusing on different things like countdowns, reviews, opinion pieces, as well as just talking about media that interests me. Making quality content that first and foremost I enjoy will be the core of this channel for the foreseeable future.